Okay, so if you're a new parent, you're probably just drowning in all this fragmented advice, right? Sleep schedules, feeding charts, a million different tips and tricks. But what if we just threw all that out? What if instead we tried to actually understand the baby's operating system? That's what we're going to do today. We're going beyond all the how-tos to get to the fundamental why behind your newborn's behavior. So let's dive in.
All right, first things first, we have to start with this big, obvious question. Why are human babies so uniquely helpless? I mean, really think about it. For a species that's supposedly at the top of the food chain, it makes absolutely no sense. It feels like a massive design flaw. But here's the twist. As we're about to see, this helplessness, it isn't a bug. It's literally the single most important feature of being human. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about this wild concept called exterogestation. Then we'll get into the baby's unfinished neural hardware. After that, we'll look at your role as the external regulator, dig into the actual neuroscience of what makes soothing work, and finally, we'll see how this all calibrates your baby's brain for the long haul.
All right, section 1, the secret of exterogestation. So you've probably heard people talk about the fourth trimester, right? Well, there's a much more powerful term from neuroscience for this, and it's exterogestation. It literally means gestation outside the womb.
So why does this happen? Well, it's because of our species' really unique evolutionary trick, something called secondary Altriciality. And what that basically means is that we don't finish building our super complex brains inside the womb. Instead, we're born with this powerful but kind of minimalist brain that has this absolutely explosive growth spurt after we're born, out in the real world. You can think of it as a birth first, build the network later strategy. It's the secret to our adaptability as a species, but it comes with one huge trade-off, that profound helplessness at birth.
Okay, so here's the single most important metaphor to hold on to. Think of your newborn as a brand new computer. It's got incredibly powerful, top-of-the-line hardware, but its operating system hasn't been installed yet. It's just bare metal. And for these first 3 months, you, the caregiver, you're the cloud server. You are literally running the whole system remotely, while the OS slowly downloads and installs onto the local machine. So, if the baby is new hardware, then what are the specs? Let's take a look under the hood at the built-in limitations of this unfinished neural system. This right here is probably the most important spec you need to understand. A newborn's actions, the startling, the grasping, the rooting around for food, none of that is intentional in the way an adult thinks of it. It's not coming from the thinking part of the brain at all. These are deep, primitive subcortical reflexes. Basically, they're automatic programs. And this table really just drives the point home. See, in a mature brain, signals zip down these fast, myelinated nerve pathways. Think of them like perfectly insulated electrical wires. But in a newborn, that insulation, the myelin, it just isn't there yet. So the signals are way slower, much less controlled. And because of that, the system just defaults to the most basic, primitive parts of the brain, the brainstem and the spinal cord, which are just running on these automatic reflexive programs. And look, if you need any more proof of just how deep and non-conscious these reflexes are, get this. This is a truly stunning fact from the research. These exact same primitive reflexes can be observed in an anencephalic infants. These are babies born without the higher parts of the brain, without a cerebral cortex. That tells you everything. These actions are about as fundamental and hardwired as it gets. Okay, the second major hardware limitation is something called sensory gating failure. Right now, your adult brain is effortlessly filtering out tons of information. The hum of your computer, the feeling of your shirt against your skin. A newborn's brain just can't do that. The circuits that are supposed to act like a sensory filter, they're just not online yet. So for them, everything floods in, all at once, with no filter. And this leads to a behavior I'm sure you've seen. The baby staring, totally locked onto a ceiling fan or a toy. And you think, wow, they're so focused. Well, this is called obligatory looking, and it's actually the exact opposite of focus. The brain is so overwhelmed by the visual input that it literally cannot disengage. It can't look away. It's a sign of system overload, not deep, thoughtful engagement. All right, section 3. So we've got these major hardware limitations, a body driven by reflexes, and a sensory system with no filter. So, how does an infant possibly cope with all that? And the answer is simple. They don't. You do. You become, quite literally, an external part of your baby's nervous system. Now, the scientific framework for understanding this is called dynamic systems theory, and it sounds complicated, but the core idea is pretty simple. It says that a baby's state, calm, sleeping, crying, isn't some preset program that's just running. Instead, that state self-organizes in real time. It emerges from the constant dynamic interaction between their own body and brain and you. You are the most important part of their environment.
And in this model, we can think of a baby's moods as attractor states. It's like a landscape with valleys. The deep attractors are like deep valleys. Think deep sleep or an inconsolable crying jag. Once the baby rolls into that valley, it takes a ton of energy to get them out. Then you have shallow attractors. These are like tiny dips in the landscape. That beautiful, quiet, alert state, that's a shallow attractor. It's wonderful, but it's incredibly unstable and can be disrupted by almost anything. So how do you get them out of that deep, deep valley of crying? Well, you become what the theory calls the control parameter. Your actions, the rhythmic rocking, the shushing, your calm presence, they aren't just vague, comforting gestures. No, they are precise inputs of energy into the system. And those inputs can trigger what's called a phase shift, a sudden dramatic jump that literally flips the entire system from that stable state of crying back to calm. Okay, so we know you're the control parameter that can flip the switch. But what's actually happening inside the baby's brain when you do that? Let's dig into the neuroscience of soothing and see how that operating system really gets downloaded. First things first, we have to completely reframe what crying is. Let's be crystal clear. It is not manipulation. It is not a conscious attempt to get you to do something. From a computational neuroscience viewpoint, crying is a broadcast signal of homeostatic collapse. That just means it's a system-wide blaring alarm that the brain's basic predictions about the world, predictions like I should be warm or I should not be hungry, have completely and catastrophically failed. So let's walk through how your intervention actually works, step by step. It all starts with a prediction error. The baby's brain predicted warm, but it feels cold. The brain basically panics and cranks the volume up to 11 on all sensory input, which of course just makes everything worse. That's when you hear the broadcast signal, the crying. And that's your cue. You come in and provide this simple, rhythmic, highly predictable input, rocking, shushing. In information theory, we'd call this low entropy input. It's a simple, predictable anchor in a sea of total chaos, and it's just what the brain needs to latch onto, reset its predictive models, and finally calm down. And this is so important. This whole process of co-regulation, it isn't just a short-term fix to get through a tough afternoon. This is about the long game. This is about physically building the architecture of your child's brain for the rest of their life. And the long-term effects are just profound. For one, your actual physiologies can synchronize. Your heart rates and your breathing can literally couple together. But even more critically, your calm, responsive presence acts as a buffer for their stress. It calibrates their core stress system, what's called the HPA axis for life. Think about it. Every single time you lend them your calm, you are physically laying down the neural pathways they will one day use to calm themselves down. What starts as external regulation from you today becomes their internal brain structure tomorrow.
So let's just bring this all home. For these first 3 months, and honestly for a long time after, your role is so much deeper than just the mechanics of feeding, changing, and cleaning. You're not just caring for a baby. You are actively co-constructing a human brain. Your presence, your touch, your voice, your responsiveness, these are the critical raw materials that are shaping its final architecture. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Knowing what we've just talked about, knowing that you are the external cortex, that you are the cloud server, that you are the co-architect of a human mind, how does that change the way you see your role in these fleeting, exhausting, and unbelievably important first few months?